Hey, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Plenty going on in this episode. We have Tom Hawkins. Tomahawk is double parked at the MCG at the Taylor Swift concert. No, we're not talking 2 cars. We're talking 2 beers. We've got the Tasmania team. Are they actually going to happen? There's a bit of a political war going on down south over whether the AFL team is coming. And lastly, the Gold Coast Suns have had a big signing. 2 years for who? We'll talk about that and much more here in the podcast starting now. All right, legends, we are into it. Preseason's almost done. Thank God. Thank God. But before we get into this, I'm going to introduce the man, the myth, the legend. That is Brayden Cox. Welcome to the pod.
Can we just get to the footy? Because I'm freaking sick of it, mate. It's these intra-clubs and fake practice matches, then the match sims and the real stuff is coming up. But I just want to play. I want to see the footy, the real stuff. I want it to count because I can't look at, period 12, the score's 226. Get it going. We want to see some footy. I'm sick of, there's nothing on, Mace.
Are you telling me you're hyped to go up to round 0 in Queensland and New South Wales, Brayden?
Oh, the fact that they've blue balled us with all these match sims and then we're going to have to kick it off with round 0.
That's it.
It hasn't been broken. Let's not stuff with it. Couple pracky games and then we're in.
That's I totally agree. Life has changed. We're going to talk about this in the podcast of how preseason has definitely changed over the years. I miss a few little things that we used to do. The little nag cut back in the day, that was some good stuff.
And you played in Bendigo or whatever.
Yeah, first game ever was, I think, Bendigo against Carlton.
See, even that.
I didn't know who Chris Judd was, and he was like super nice to me after the game. And I was like, good to meet you, mate. And he was like, all the best for your career. I was like, man, that guy's really nice. And he's like one of the best players ever play. I was like, okay, I should know that.
It's surprising that they got Juddied over to Bendigo. That's pretty big.
Yeah, well, it's surprising they got enough tape to come up there with him too, I think.
He's probably trying to wheel and deal out there. We know he's a big businessman.
I think I was like, the guy with like both his shoulders taped and everything else like taped up. He's like, Chris Judd, that guy. Yeah, right away. Yeah, I know exactly who it is. Also, one of the best commercials ever, Sports Bet, with him. And he's talking about like the guys like at the courthouse who's going with who uses too much tape on the team. Yeah. Chris Judd. Chris Judd's definitely always had that ticked off, I think.
So what? Your first one was 2014, 2015?
2015, yes, NAB Cup Indigo.
So take us back to 2015. What did the preseason look like back then?
Preseason games back then, we had the Super Goal. Yeah. Do you remember the Super Bowl? Like, there was a whole big thing of like
outside 59 points.
Like $500 or something, I think, was donated to your local football club, which made me kind of want to do it even more because I was like, who is my local football club? Do I get to choose? How does this work?
They send it back to the States. It's probably only like $14.50 back in the States.
Yeah, with the conversion at that time, I think it was. But then they got from $500 and I think it became like a bag of footballs. And then it just slowly diminished to nothing. And then AFLX came in. Oh, baby. AFLX came in. They're like, all right, we're going to make a whole spectacle about this. And that was the infamous photo of Gil McLaughlin with all the circus people around him and him just not won a bar of it.
Just a meme that will last
I think that's my
forever.
favorite photo the AFL's ever put out.
Yeah, it's up there. I can't, like, nothing off the top of my... But, yeah, it's... Now you've mentioned it. They really have pulled back on the prizes over time. Like you used to win the car when you took a specky.
Yeah.
And then I think from memory, like Nick Nat or something said he won it and he won like a year's supply of Wheat Bix or some shit.
What?
And it's like, and then now you get nothing. Well, ask Jeremy Howe. He got nothing. But
he got screwed is what he got.
But now you get what? You go up and you get an award and a handshake and...
I don't even know if they give speeches anymore.
Thanks for coming. But yeah you used to get... Because everyone, it used to just be the same. Like, oh, he's got the car.
Yeah.
So it was like something cool.
Now it's cool. Now it's just, it's lacked a bit of luster, you could say, over the past few years.
I wonder if any mark of the year, goal of the year player has still got the car they won.
Oh, they would have sold that in a heartbeat.
Nah, surely
you're selling
there's someone rolling around in the 1992 car of the year Toyota Corolla or something.
Ford Pinto, baby.
All the mismatching panels.
Oh, yep. Yeah. I would love to know. But we will get into the preseason, Brayden. We did have a preseason match versus North. We found out what North Ball was. North Ball. We found out what North Ball was, and we got demolished. Not demolished, but we lost significantly.
Rough start to the year. It's hard to tell if you got demolished because they just kept changing the scenarios. You went into the 5-minute drill, you lost that. Then they went into the 5-minute drill. I'm pretty sure you lost that. You lost a lot. You managed to lose a lot of things in one game.
We had a few of our older players sitting out. We had anyone, I think, that was like over 30, essentially was not playing.
Half the team.
So you had a bit of, you could say, a game experience wasn't out there.
What I did like it, there was like this weird moment in the game where you could kind of almost, you could see the difference when you take out DeGoey, Dacos, all these players that were out there for the first kind of half. And then you kind of went shit after that. Is there a correlation there? But wait, you were still there after halftime though.
I only played from halftime on. It's kind of weird. That correlation might
weird. Maybe
directly be myself.
It's an anomaly.
It might actually be me.
We need more data.
Yeah, we need more data. I wasn't the only one. But I will say this. I was captain for the second half, so maybe that also had something to do with it.
Which is prestigious.
My halftime speech was not good enough, Brayden. Was not good enough.
What was the captaining experience like? Is that just another thing that you can put on the list of achievements that you've had coming over here?
Well, the weird thing is like we were warming up at halftime, so I wasn't really even told what was told at halftime. So I had to go out there with not really an understanding of exactly what was said in the different line meetings and stuff. And they're like, all right, cool. So what do we need to focus on? I'm like, kick more goals than them.
Yeah, so what was your first speech? Because I'm pretty sure I might have told this on the podcast, but I was there for Pendle's first speech. And, Pendle's iconic. Yeah. He's going to break the games record. He's broken the most touches in footy. He's got a long list of things that he's achieved. But, stellar debut captain speech is not one of them because it was a stinker.
Really?
He
give us a play-by-play.
His whole thing, like as first-time captain, he said that there's a slit in the banner and you need to run through the slit in the banner.
Yeah.
That was pretty much the gist of his whole speech.
That was the whole speech before the game.
Like, don't expect to get forced back from the banner because there's a slit in the middle. And then he was like, all right, let's go.
That's it.
It's like,
but you go through the banner and then you usually have a speech after that, I thought.
He's just, I don't know. He started
he's like,
slow.
all right, boys, you know what to do. Let's go win.
Has he built into it? Is he a real speech giver now, or is he just
Darcy's a captain now. I mean, he was really good. I thought he was always very, because he knows the game so well. So he would be like, "This is what we need to do. This is
Pendles
why. Let's get into it." Both of them now.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things. Like as captain, you almost like just repeat what the coaches said in a short form, and then just say something else of like, camaraderie, and then you go, cool, bang, let's go.
Yeah.
And I tried that. I did say like two things that like was our focus areas, and I was like, and then let's communicate.
Yeah, nice.
I've got it written on my hand. It's point 1, point 2, point 3, communicate. All right, sweet, sounds good. Let's do this
milk.
thing.
Oh wait, shopping list, wrong hand. Wrong hand. So tell me more about this North game because I tuned in and out. Now, that happens in the preseason. We saw a former Collingwood player, Jaden Stevenson, kick a few goals.
Went pretty well.
Big Suv.
And it's the first time I think that Clarko could really show what he was going to do as a coach.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of been obviously in and out of the whole North Melbourne situation. Now that he's got the preseason under his belt with the team and being able to showcase, I guess, the type of football they want to play. They call it North ball, right? North ball?
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with the idea.
NORF?
NORF, I think. Yeah. Which, I mean, why? I don't know why we need to dumb that word down, but it is what it is. But yeah, no, it's a cool experience, I think, for him to be able to finally say, like, this is what the future's going to look like and the game style we're going to play. And it was good enough to beat us on the day. So unfortunately we did lose, but it is a preseason game. And
we're recording this Monday, the 26th. So you've got a game tomorrow.
Yes.
Against Richmond.
Yep.
At Icon.
At Icon Park.
Why?
Well, we just figured. I actually don't know because it's. You would think. I think it's because it's televised, so I think they maybe have a better viewpoints and for cameras and all that kind of stuff to be able to do.
So
it.
you play there, and then Carlton has their game the next night. Icon Park. Okay.
Well, then I guess whoever's recording probably doesn't have to take the cameras home. They're just like, just leave it there. 24 hours, we'll be back.
Rough. Just chew up their deck. It's going to be great. But it'll be good to see, a bit more from Richmond as well for all the footy fans out there. I feel like every year it's still, do you reckon Richmond can contend? They've still got a bunch of, top-end talent, but they're, missing their Trent Cotchin and Jack Rewalt and all the icons.
Dusty's still in there doing his thing though.
Dusty's still in there. Had a great year last year, and hopefully Tom Lynch can get back in and start doing Tom Lynch things because it'll be exciting to see how are you How are you feeling going into that? Did you pull up sore coming out of the North game? How's the body feeling?
Yeah, it's good. It's good, man. I can't really complain. It's I think with the North game, like you only play a half, and there's kind of a bit of people in and out and stuff like that. So it would be good to have, I think, kind of the full team like rearing to go for this Richmond game and get an idea of kind of where round one's going to sit with a lot of people and who's going to be playing and stuff. So that's kind of the benefit, I think, of this next game is now we're really looking into getting into round 0, I guess. And being able to have that team kind of looking and being able to play with each other and the experience against another team. Like we mentioned before, it's the preseason isn't like 3 games anymore. It's essentially, a game that you kind of put together with. You got the intra-club start off, and then you've got a game that you kind of can change, I guess, the quarters and the times and do different scenarios and stuff. And you've got the proper preseason game that is a full game that's going to be tomorrow against Richmond, which is exciting. So, yeah, come on down to Icon Park on Tuesday night.
Now, before we jump into the news, because there's plenty on, I did see that the Collingwood media team dropped a new doco.
Yes.
I want to get your opinion on it and just like what memories that jogged sitting through and watching the trailer.
Yeah, they asked me to watch the trailer, which was really cool. It talked about essentially like it's a bit of a snapshot of the final series, obviously, and then like a little bit of the stuff that we did throughout the year. And some of the things like we ran the steps at the MCG at the beginning of the year, and we talked about that being one of our mottos is taking the steps. And there's little things like that is encapsulated, I think, in this. It comes out on Wednesday, and it's going out in theaters too, which is pretty cool. So it's a big deal, and it's going to be exciting. Like I got to see the little trailer, and there's so many little intricacies that happen throughout the year, and you follow the big players. You got obviously Darcy Moore and Scott Pendlebury and Dykes and all them and Craig, and it's those things that you probably get a bit more behind the scenes of what's going through players' minds and coaches' minds and stuff when things happen. So you talk about the big moments throughout the season and final series and grand final and what was happening in their brain. You get that kind of behind the scenes look at it, which would be pretty cool. And even if you're not a Collingwood fan, I think it's going to be a pretty epic little piece that they've put together. It comes out to like an hour and a half long, so it's not a short film. Yeah. It's a proper deep dive into what happened. So the club obviously filmed throughout the year, had a lot of background information and a lot of filming behind the scenes that hasn't been seen. So that'll come out on Wednesday, and the club's pretty excited to show a bit of who we are as a team and what we're able to accomplish.
It takes trust from the football department, the coaches, to let people in with the cameras, even though they're internal. I definitely know the struggles back and forth with some of that stuff, but some clubs just shut that stuff down. So like it's cool to see the doors fully open, and it's great for the fans, not only of Collingwood, but of the entire AFL to see behind the scenes. I'm in particular looking forward to the Nick Dacos story arc and seeing what didn't we see, because we knew it was touch and go for him to be playing in finals. And there's that one shot in the trailer where he goes to get around the cone and his leg collapses.
Ooh,
and it's like, God, he doesn't look like he should be playing.
Yeah.
Comes out, iconic handball to De Goey, wins the flag. We
won the flag, not he.
We could just sit there all day talking about it, but there's plenty of news to get through, and there's so much.
There's a lot happening.
Doom and gloom about the AFL, so we will start with Collingwood-centric stuff and get some positive stuff out there.
Is there one team that kind of dominated the headlines this week, Brayden?
We're not going to touch on one.
No? Okay.
But then we might touch on one team more than others, but it's because the news dictates that.
Yeah.
So you signed Will Parker.
Yes.
For starters, Cat B, rookie.
Cat B.
Cricketer. Were you Cat B?
I was Cat B, yeah.
So can you give him any advice on Cat B life?
It's slim pickings as far as money. It's slim pickings as far as money. And you also get the highest number, essentially, pretty much. So,
wait, so you're not the highest number guy?
No, he is not the highest number. I'm 46, so he's 45.
Did you make him go lower?
Well, this is the thing, Brayden, and
I
was so not happy with this because in the locker room, I think we've talked about this, is I have the locker that is mine, and I have the locker to the right, and I have the locker to the left was empty. So you had 47, 45 were empty, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, sick, all my stuff, don't need anything, like everything. I just took over all 3 lockers. Well, I walked in the other day, and one of the lockers was cleared, and all my stuff was thrown from my drawer there into my locker. I was like, what the hell's going on? They go, we've signed a Cat B rookie. And I was like, not a good first impression. Not a good first impression. It's like taking my space.
It's like a movie plot where it's like now he's got to gain your trust and friendship over the course of the season, and you'll be the best 2 friends.
It's so funny, but he's a lovely fella. He's really nice. Played a bit of cricket back in the day.
He could also get cricketing tips off
Well, this is what I told him. I told him the other day, I said, look, I know nothing. Like, I know a little bit, but I need to be more well aware of cricket rules and what's going on. I said, every day I see you, I want a cricket fact. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have a better understanding of exactly what's going on in the cricket world, why it's important, and what's the biggest news stories of the year.
And you guys are in pretty good nick. I think Brayden Maynard coming off a bit of shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
Josh Dacos has some, I think, calf complaints.
Yeah,
but little bits and pieces, but you're thereabouts. There's
Everyone's
no one really
things, right?
going through it that much. I think Dan McStay, obviously, with the ACL kind of being the worst of it.
Yeah.
But geez, you're primed and ready to go for the start of the season whenever the hell it arrives. You're ready to go, but we will go across to our friends at the Blues,
The place we're renting for the week.
because down at Icon Park, they've got a few injury woes. Sam Walsh is on a modified training program because he's got that back injury. It's just lingering away.
Yeah.
But Patrick Cripps did see him running a little bit and said he looked all right. Which means that he's going to miss round one. There's no chance he's missing round one. I've read that many articles. He sounds cooked. And then Cripps didn't fill me with any confidence where he's like, yeah, I think I saw him running. Like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I saw him at the club. Yeah, so he should be out and about.
Wiedering went down with his calf. He'll be out for a while. Silvani out with the ACL. Martin's touch and go with an MCL. Corey Durden, always Hemi, calf, respectively. So they're in the race for round one. So there's plenty of injuries down there, and they have to take on Brizzy. So they have to go up and verse the team that, played off in the grand final, and they got all these injuries. So, not some great news down there, but they did get one piece of great news because Michael Voss did sign a 2-year contract extension.
Shout out to all the Vossi.
So he's there till the end of 2026 at least.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
I mean, they took him probably the furthest they've been in plus, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, well,
really.
they did want to sack him halfway through last year. Now they're giving him the extension.
Yeah, and then you make a prelim final.
It's a fickle industry, mate.
It is a fickle industry, Brayden, but this is how it is. And I think as a head coach, you always know it's a bit fickle. So congrats to him on a 2-year deal. I think it's a bit of repayment for being able to take them so far last year and be able to kind of show a bit of faith and excitement and hope for the Carlton Football Club, like that. He's obviously the head kind of person that's leading the way. So with him, Patrick Cripps as a captain, I think they're in a good stance right now. It's a pretty exciting time for Carlton.
Do you buy into this speculation? It's been kind of, I feel like the journalists are just throwing it out there.
Gosh.
I saw Scoop McClure saying that if Carlton aren't the favourites for the flag, you don't know footy because they have to win it. They're primed to win this thing. Do you reckon they're just chucking that out there to just stir up the fan base?
Well, I think Carlton's one of the biggest supporter bases. So, whenever you make a statement like that, obviously it's going to get clicks and it's going to get a bit of a run in the media. So, I mean, they made a prelim last year. So, I guess technically, from just that knowledge, you would have to say that they're in the running, like they're in the top 8, which is, an initial thing to be able to complete to get to the grand final. And then making a prelim you're essentially one game away from a granny. So, it's not a ridiculous statement. I mean, I think there's probably other teams you would throw out there that would be more of okay, come on, mate. But I think that one, he just used that to, maybe he's taking the side of Carlton this year and he's going, you know what, I'm going to wear a blue scarf for the rest of the year and I'm just going to be gun-ho for the Carlton Blues for the rest of the year. I don't know. But like you said, it did get a bit of a run in the media and that's what he's trying to do and that's his job. So, we're all suckers for it.
It's not the same if you come out and say Collingwood are going to win the flag.
We'll never say
probably
that.
Have to
it's
say
a day
that,
by
don't
day
you?
thing, bro. It's a day by day. Just getting back to work.
But one team that, they're always up there and they reckon they're going to be up there again, Geelong. I'm not too sure about it because they have to fall off eventually. They've had a lot of retirements, a lot of injury, they didn't do well last year and not a great start to their practice game. Cam Guthrie.
Oh, Cam Guthrie. It's not Tom Hawk being double parked at the MCG watching Taylor Swift. No, it's not that one.
Can we touch on that? Your boy,
so good.
Your boy, Josh Dacos, did one of the biggest rolls of just rolled
threw him completely under the bus.
Rolled him under the bus.
I don't even think he knew or realized it until the media hit it and was like, "Oh, Tom Hawk's not."
Well, the first thing where my eyes went in the picture was like, "Oh, Tom Hawkins is in the background holding 2 cans."
Tom Hawkins, who is having a good time.
And the problem is, if he was smiling, being yay, he looks.
He looked like he had been caught. He was no.
Like a deer in the headlights, oh shit.
He was not warned before that photo was taken, that's
These
for
aren't
sure.
mine. Who put these here?
I was holding this for someone else. I don't know.
But Cam Guthrie, unfortunately, it looks like he's done his quad to start the year. Not great. I don't know.
Very early in the game, too.
I don't know why you got Cam Guthrie out there, preseason game, about 35 degrees or whatever it was. Yeah, you just don't want to see it. You don't want to see any injuries, especially this late into preseason. Injured at the start. Miss all of it.
Hopefully no injuries, bro.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate for him. Injures the quad, but these things are a bit of a risk of playing preseason games. There's always, we talk about the other ones with Carlton, some of their kind of woes at the moment. There's always going to be someone that gets injured in a preseason game, whether it be, whatever club it is. But that's the risk you have every time you go out and play. Because it's like you're not playing at half-ass. Like you're always playing to win the game, no matter what it is, if it's preseason, intra-club, whatever it may be. So these things do happen. And it's an unfortunate, I guess, sign of season being around the corner, these things. But they will they'll start to ramp up now that real games are being played.
If you miss a lot of the preseason, how hard is it to get that fitness base back while the games are on?
Yeah, it's not easy. It depends on what the injury is, because if you can run and still get on your legs, like you can still have that kind of volume go through your legs and just keep you in shape. But if you do something to your like calf or your quad or something like that, it's like you're essentially swimming, or you're in an ultra G or something maybe, or you're doing like something like upper body workout to try to get a sweat in, but you can't really run your legs. So your legs are almost off for a decent amount of time. And then you go back into a full training. You're like, okay, this is like a big step up. I mean, last year I had the spleen, put me out 7 or 8 weeks, and it took me. Well, I couldn't do anything for the whole time. I couldn't even get out and go for a jog or anything. It took me a week to get back. So let me be contradicting to my own statement I just made, sir.
Different players.
I do remember I was sitting there for that week just doing like up, down, sprints, hit bodies, up, down, sprints, hit bodies. Like I just smashed through conditioning sessions, left, right, and center. And I think it was like a week or two into that, I just essentially was playing again.
And you know how hard your preseason is here in Melbourne when it's raining every second day. Imagine, we'll talk about the Gold Coast Suns next, but imagine doing a preseason camp up on the Gold Coast when you're looking at those, in Brisbane, you're looking at those like 40-degree days, super humid.
You'd have to be training at like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Surely.
Like it wouldn't aid you, surely. It wouldn't help. Like, they're like, oh, it's harder, you're sweating more, you're doing...
Wasn't this the whole thing they said about the grand final? Like, oh, it's going to be a hot grand final. Brisbane's been prepared for this. They've been training up in Queensland weather for like a whole year.
Yeah. Yeah, surely it leads to more dehydration and more injuries.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know sports science. I'm not the guy. But we will say...
Neither of us qualified.
Ben King, exciting times at the Gold Coast Suns.
My boys!
Good sign for Dimma, because Ben King signed a 2-year contract extension. Good signs for Dimma because, people want to stick around, but it is also just the 2 years to be like, I'll give you 2 years.
And Dimma's got, I think, a 6-year deal. So it's a good start for his, time up there, right?
Yeah.
To have one of your best players re-sign, it's a bit of faith shown to him to say, like, look, I'm committed to this for the next 2 years, that whatever happens, I'm going to see out kind of how your game plan comes around.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, in 2 years, you'll know whether or not it's suitable to how you play.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why you sign around a 2-year deal. Because if it isn't suitable, then you probably go, okay, cool, like let's move on to a different situation that is more suitable for how he, is a player. So I think the 2 years is probably strategic in a sense to kind of see how Dimma kind of goes with him and how their relationship goes. And then from Damien Hardwick, it's a good sign to have your best player still back for the first 2 years of your career. It'd be almost a sigh of relief for him, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see him out there. Everyone's been linking him and Max King together wherever that they fell, because they didn't know whether one was going to come down. There would be 2 at St Kilda or 2 at the Suns. Well, there's not going to be 2
Do you think we'll ever see the King brothers play together?
I don't.
No?
I don't.
I kind of think maybe at the end of their career.
I feel
It'd
like
be a cool 1 year thing to see at least.
No, but I feel like people want it to happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's going to happen. You didn't, like Nick and Jack Rewalt aren't brothers, obviously, but like, it would have been great to see them play together. But
yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, you got the
more,
Dykes brothers, and it's like such a wholesome feeling. I think you get the King brothers there, maybe same.
Surely you get more loyal to your club. And although you do have one blood brother, I'm sure he's got 40 other brothers. You know what I'm trying to say? 40
teammates that he considers brothers? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's the gist. But I think there's a better way to say that. But but it is cool. I'm keen to see the success of the Gold Coast Suns. Their first year in the league was my first year in the AFL.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. I'm almost dead now, and they haven't had any success. So
this is our year, Brayden. This is our year.
We were saying last week. The week before.
As long as Took is okay, Jared Butch is in the midfield, we'll be all right.
We were saying there was no $1 million players at the Gold Coast Suns. I reckon there's one now.
I reckon it just got signed.
I'm pretty sure that's safe to say. But we will jump into now the serious topics come, and they come thick and fast. And we're going to Melbourne. It's only just down the road from the Collingwood Football Club, where it's all rosy at the Collingwood Football Club.
Plenty of stories.
Not as rosy from the outside looking in.
Well, let's start positive. Let's start with their preseason game. Clayton Oliver was absolutely tearing down the house.
Well, that's it. Clayton Oliver's back, for starters, because he's been out with personal issues, and then he was training by himself, and then he was training on the fringes of training, and then now he's back in the team. And
he would be an interesting person to get on the pod. I'll have to reach out to him.
I don't think it's a football playing ability issue, because obviously he's a gun. We know he's a gun, and he played Clayton Oliver style footy in the practice sim, and kicked an amazing left foot across the body goal. All the teammates got around him,
doesn't he?
Yeah, so it's good to see him back out there, because in most situations, now obviously we know diddly shit about this situation, but being around a footy club, you've got access to everything you could need to get yourself in the right mental state and physical state. So him being back at the club, hopefully that's a good sign. It can only lead to kind of good things. Yeah.
I think him coming out and playing over the weekend, obviously there's been a lot of media come out of Melbourne. One of the good things about, I guess, preseason and season coming around the corner is you can actually have a bit of a team camaraderie, I think, you have those games where you become closer and those moments that really bring you together as a team. And obviously there's been a lot of headlines and things that are happening over there at the moment, but these are one of those moments I think you just become very, very tight-knit, and that's what you have to do as a team is come together and look after each other and make sure everyone's okay. And, from a mental health standpoint and physical standpoint, there's a lot of things going on, but you just kind of hope that everyone's okay. It is such a footy is such a thing where it's just more than just a game. There's so much more that goes into it, and I think Clayton's probably seen quite a bit of that over the last few years, and you look at some of the comments that Max Gawn said and stuff, and he's an incredible leader, and I think that that team has been through a lot and been through a lot of different times where every single year, every single preseason, there's always a big media or news story that's coming out of one of the big teams, right? And this is kind of one team the media is really focused on this preseason, and I'm sure Max Gawn will sit there and look at the boys and say, look, let's really hone in on this and, really come together as a team and start this season strong. It's the worst time of year. Not that you ever want, scandal or news coming out of your club or anything like that, but this time of year is the worst time of year because you can't do anything to prove otherwise. You got to sit there. There's nothing that they're writing off, so they need stuff to write about. So you get more stories about negativity. You can't come out and prove that you're in a good state mentally and physically. So it's starting to get around to footy. Melbourne start winning games. Players start playing well. A lot of this will be forgotten. But right now is a hard time of year. There's just not as many stories going around to focus on. So whenever something bad happens, it's almost microscoped by the media, right? So once the season comes around, there's 18 teams, different teams playing. Then they have so much other things to focus on and cover that, something that would have happened in the preseason that gets microscope probably doesn't get as blown up in the season. Not to say that we shouldn't be taking any of these things not serious about what's happened in Melbourne, but I think the pressure in those preseason kind of moments and times is always heightened before the season actually starts. Yeah, and there's a few other things. We won't delve right into it because most of these things are very touchy, and it's not that we, don't want to make comment on it. We just don't want to make incorrect comments on it. And there's still we don't have information to come out. Yeah, all the right information. So that goes for most of the things coming out of Melbourne at the moment, one being Clayton Oliver, two being Joel Smith, who has been hit with more anti-doping violations for more serious, you could almost argue, of trafficking or attempting to traffic. So that's a very serious thing. But obviously these things, Max Gawn has to stand up there and front the media. That's got to be the hardest thing, yeah. And it's one, you don't wish it on any player. Yeah. But inevitably it comes around. And then it's not the first time and it won't be the last time.
And it's always thrown back open to it's a societal issue. Like, it's always asked of the club whether that club in particular has, a drug problem or a drug culture. And it's this ugly back and forth that it's like people make mistakes. It could be one person. It could be two people. It could be a society issue, which it is. And it's just it ping-pongs around. But the poor captain has to kind of stand up there. Darcy had to do it at the start of last year.
Yeah.
And it just, I feel like there's a time for every captain to have to get up and make this talk. But the media throwing out the questions, they know the answer, that it's a societal issue. But it's always going to linger. It's always going to be around. But it's very much a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think there's, the things that happen, it's like you try to be aware of everything as like a captain or, that's going on at the football club and all that. But you're not going to be 100% knowledgeable of everything. And like that's, whenever these things come out in the media or whatever it may happen, it's not like they're fully aware of these things, but they have to comment on it. And it's like it would be such a tough thing to be like, kind of like how we're sitting here, not knowing the full details of thing and saying, essentially, the people and the processes will happen and we'll find out more information when that happens and we'll be able to make a comment on it. But you can't say anything in the moment because the details aren't out yet. Like there's still an anti-doping code we'll probably go through and figure out what happens with this and what exactly was the situation and then be able to, hand down whatever kind of punishment they want. But at the moment, we don't know that. So how can we can only speculate as to what's going on, but to actually make a comment on it as a captain is probably one of the hardest things. You're going, I don't know. I'm not there. Yeah. I'm not the one organizing this. I'm not the one that's like sorting this out. So you're just asking me questions I can't answer. And that's probably got to be one of the hardest things because they'll just keep smashing with questions and questions and questions, trying to turn your words into whatever answer they want. And at the end of the day, there's not really any answer to be provided at times.
And at the end of the day, you're a captain of a football club. You play footy. Like you're good at playing footy, and that's kind of why you're there. It's weird that they have to front the media almost like they're the CEO of the company and they're defending, they're not just defending the player or themselves or the playing group. They're defending the club and everything bigger than the club that they're associated with. All their stuff outside of the club, all their deals, all their everything, all rides on this one press conference. But more often than not, the captain's there because he's, a good player of footy.
Yeah.
So it's like
pretty decent. Yep.
It's a lot of responsibility for the captains out there and they take it on when they take on the captaincy to a degree.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you take on standing out there and defending drug culture at your club and stuff like that. It's a pretty hard one, but we will move on because we have another thing to kind of dance around.
Yeah.
And it's and it's the Brayshaw retirement.
This is a bit of an awkward little like ninth grade, Sadie Hawkins dance at the moment, isn't it?
It's a blue light disco. We talked about
blue light disco, yes.
So scan results showed microscopic changes in Brayshaw's brain after the concussion in the qualifying final loss last year. And, that combined with neurological testing and a discussion with medical experts led to Brayshaw being medically retired from the game. So extremely serious as a history of concussion and, the Frawley family, which he's associated with and everything that's going on in the AFL at the moment, obviously a massive talking point. But there's not a lot that we can say on the issue. I think it's probably just something that we can get more of an idea around current players and what the process is. I don't know if that'll be something that our listeners will find interesting. But from, you've been in the system 10 years now.
Yeah.
From when you first joined the AFL in Collingwood back in 2014 to 2024, 10 years later, what's been the difference that, you can tell over that 10-year period?
Yeah, I mean, I first came in, I think the first time I landed in Australia, the initial things that was told to me was the Essendon saga.
Yeah.
And I was like, great first impression. Great first impression. So this is normality? Like, no. And I was like, well, every headline was that.
Yeah.
That was pretty wild to think. And then, I think with this concussion stuff, like my experience I've had over the last 10 years is like it's gotten a lot more specific as far as, the prerequisites and stuff. And the, now our rules and regulations is the 2 weeks. And, you have the concussion tests and all that where the concussion tests have gotten a lot more specific. Where when I first came in, it was you essentially had this game where cards were flipped over and you try to, say, I think it was like the same suit, you had to say no. And if it was a different card, you had to say yes or something along those lines. and that was how they judged concussion. We've had different people come in and use like VR headsets and like try to figure out, your reaction times to different games that you play on them. There's been a lot of people have come in, but they're still, and this is the thing that keeps coming up, is there's still not the full evidence of exactly what, can show that you have a sonic concussion. Yes, you can definitely have, things that go on and like, lack of, or sensitivity to bright light and all these other different symptoms, but you have to have a baseline, and that's what's kind of changed, I think, over the years is how, I guess, specific the baselines have become. I think now I've gone into our concussion testing for the year, and it's like an hour, which it used to be like a 10 or 15-minute thing. So it's a lot more, I guess, detailed now than it used to be, and that's obviously come along with a lot of these things that have happened in the AFL. And it's for the betterment of the game, it's for the betterment of the players, it's for the health and safety of the players, and I think that's what's most important. And it's tough to see. I think we all play on different teams, and we're all rivals in some sort, but like we're all employed by the same person doing the same job. So it's not always easy seeing someone else have to be essentially told they have to retire, and that's kind of the case here. But like I said, the biggest thing is his health and safety, and for him to have a long and healthy life. And if that's the AFL or concussion research people making that decision for him, then it's got to be a tough pill to swallow. But if it's for the betterment of him, then you have to think that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's definitely very scary, and that's why the AFL is going through a class action at the moment.
Yeah.
The AFL needs to mitigate risk, and they're trying to prove that they
did their best,
have done their best to mitigate risk. They've said that they've put in at least 30 rule changes since the year 2000 to reduce the risk of players suffering concussions, and they're trying to say that players and professionals know that they accept the inherent risk playing professional contact sport. So it's going to go back and forth a lot.
There's always risk with the contact sport, right? And I think there's an understanding of that. But probably the biggest question is whether or not clubs were handling it with, the extreme caution and safety around it. And like we're talking about in 2002, I think it was, or 2007, around in the 2000s, right? So we've learned a lot more throughout the past 15, 20 years about concussions and put in more protocols and things like that around it. And I think people have definitely seen that over the years. But this kind of lawsuit probably goes back to whether or not the due diligence and care was actually shown there, whenever that time frame of players were going through. And I think it was like over 70 or like 100 players or something like that are part of this. So it's not a small, issue. It's a big thing that IFL is going to have to deal with. And you see it more and more. I think, I had a friend of mine, Jack Frost, who went through his concussion issues. Max Lynch just retired because of concussions. And, it's something that it's relevant. But the biggest question is whether or not the IFL is doing, its health and safety around, players in certain circumstances they know they could have mitigated, long-term health effects.
I want to ask one more before we move on, because I am very interested in it. And I feel like there has to be a change in the culture of footy, but I don't know if that change has already taken place. Back in the day, it used to be like, you got to go. Your time to go, you got to go. And players are expected to go back with the flight and put themselves in really dangerous positions.
Yeah.
Is that still the culture of footy? Is that still around? Would, if the ball's lofted up and someone's yelling out, you got to go, and you just run them backwards blind and you got to throw yourself into a pack, is that the expectation?
I think, you still want to play to your best of your ability, right? And that's something you have to do. I think there's ways around it of trying to protect yourself better whenever you go up and do a back with the flight, whether it be sticking your knees up or whatever it may be in that sense. I do think, though, we've gotten to the point where, we have doctors on the sideline where if we show signs of concussions, they have to take us straight off the field, and we have no say in it. So we get taken straight off the field down, do the medical concussion assessment, and that's taken out of our hands. And sometimes that's actually a good thing because players obviously want to play through it, and they're so caught up in the game and everything else that that's not a priority of theirs. They're winning the ball in the next contest is. Where now that the responsibility somewhat is taken out of their hands and put into a doctor, and yes, I still have to pass the test and everything else and to get back on the field, but at least now there's systems in place that can mitigate, people trying to play through it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, the AFL has done to try to help out the situation that is. But there's always going to be, a need for someone to go and get a hardball get. That's always part of AFL. You can't really take that out of it. To go up and try to take a mark, someone punch me in the back of the head is not something I can control. It's something they can control as a defender. But that's just part of the game. It's a contact game. So the AFL, I think, is doing its best to try to mitigate concussions, but will it be able to fully eliminate them ever? No, that's part of the game. So it's going to be a tough thing for them, with these different lawsuits and stuff that are coming through to, I guess, justify their side of it. And it's going to be a real question mark and a real interesting time to be able to see how, I guess, like Supreme Court's really adjudicate it and see kind of where the blame actually lands.
And that's where I think, so like from the outside looking, it feels like the AFL started the process of mitigating risk. They're a fair way down the track. Clubs are doing so, like you said, with doctors on the sidelines and stuff like that. Now I think it's, the last line is like the players and it's going to be against what the fans want. The fans want, blood and guts and like carnage, where it's going to have to be like, there's going to have to be a shift. And there's been a little bit of a shift back in the 80s, 90s. Yeah. If you drop back into the hole, a key forward's going to kill
Clean
you.
you up, yeah.
Now you don't see that as much. But we'll move into Power Pepper on the weekend in a practice game. Willie Rioli has Mark Keane wrapped up in a tackle, or he's in a tackle, and Power Pepper comes through and just cleans him up.
Full speed, yeah.
Now, one, you don't want to see that in any game, let alone a practice game. Now, that's been recommended as a 3-game ban by the MRO, but it's gone straight to the Tribunal. So it's kind of, they're looking at a minimum of 3 games.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the Tribunal's discretion. I look at something like that and go, the players need to mitigate the risk. And obviously it comes back down to what we talked about before with the culture of things. It might be right with 90% of everyone. Yeah. 90% of the people out there, 95 might go, I'm not doing that. That's silly. But it takes one guy to come through and concuss a player. That's where the player mitigation of the risk, I feel like there's some stuff that it gets taken out of their hands, and I'm glad it is by the clubs. But there's going to have to be large chunks where it's like, I can't tackle like that.
Yeah.
I can't go back with the flight and put myself at risk. Like there's going to have to be certain cases, but this is just like you can't line someone up or go in as hard and as reckless as you do.
You got to know when to back out, I think, of a contest if you're about to clip someone's head.
Yeah.
I think there's little things like that. No, like I've done it before. Like, I think in 2018 in Hawthorn, like I chicken wing someone in the head, and like that was, I essentially got I think it was a couple of weeks ban or something. And, I look at that and I was the scenario. It's like, yes, that's that's something that can lead to a concussion and for someone else. So I understand that. And it's going to be interesting to see if the AFL ever introduces a rule to like, have a sin bin or something.
Yeah.
Because you sit there and look at it, and it's like you could play a grand final. You could just go punch every single player on the team. And you could play the rest of that game, and you wouldn't be taken off the field or anything. Let's say you win the grand final, you'd have a medal and you'd get a few matches banned, but if you're retiring, who cares?
Which happened to Dermot Brereton. Back in the 80s, they came off the square and ran through him and he broke his ribs.
We'll be interested to see what happens with the Sam Powell Pepper. Like, obviously, there's a lot of heat around the situation and the subject at the moment. So that's why the MRO exists, to kind of go through and really go through the adjudication process with it and try to figure out exactly kind of where suspension lands and everything else. And this is a preseason game. This isn't even like of season. Obviously, they're playing opposition in Richmond on the day. So whenever you play opposition like that, I think you need to adjudicate that as an actual
you got to have official
season kind of
umpires there too.
Yeah. So I'm sure the AFL will figure that out. MRO will, hand down its judgment of it, and we'll see kind of where it lands.
Players are competitive. So it's not like you're running it out there almost in a sane state of mind. It takes some kind of...
You have to have a bit of a gladiator feel to it.
There's got to be something going into it, because you got to have a certain level of aggression. But that's another thing where I think that the culture of footy needs to change, is if you do decide to look after yourself and pull out of a contest or whatever it may be, you need to not be ridiculed and judged by it from the club.
Yeah,
which is
from the club and media of like pulling. Yeah, I kind of get that side of it too. That does make sense.
But we can talk about that all day. Before we move on from Power Pepper, I don't think normally there's all this conversation about concussion, and always there will be an incident pops up, and normally it's there'll be an overreaction because of the concussion. It'll be a big song and dance, and then they'll get let off or something, and it'll create more confusion. I'm pretty sure this one's cut and dry. Yeah. Like, I can say that from where I'm sitting. It seemed reckless, dangerous, and it resulted in a concussion.
It was full speed, like
It's a big hit.
Hitting the head high.
So, yeah, I think if we want to be moving in that direction, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer from everyone, including Sam Powell-Pepper. AFL aims for 1 million participants by 2033. That's 10 years from last year. Backed by a $1 billion investment into the game's development and in community football. So they had 530,000 registered participants in 2023. So they're looking to double that in the next 10 years. And they're going to do that by increasing funding and focusing on non-traditional footy markets like the New South Wales and the Queensland. Essentially. While we're playing around zero over there, who knows? Maybe some of that will go to international money. $1 billion, though, that's a solid investment, Brayden. That's not just a small chunk of change. I think it's 10% of their revenue.
No, 10% of your revenue into grassroots, I think, is pretty standard. You got to keep yourself, in the generations before and the generations that keep coming in. You have to keep them interested and keep them wanting to play. So I think you always have to invest in the future, and that's what they're doing here. But $1 billion, man, we're going to get into it here in a second in Tasmania. That $1 billion could go a long way.
It doesn't really, does it? $1 billion is like a concession stand at a stadium. It's not really like $1
billion for 500,000 people.
Dollar for dollar, it's a pretty good investment if you can make it happen. 1 million people for $1 billion. I think that's pretty good. The stadium that they're looking to build in Tassie is worth like 700 and something million.
Oh.
So like $1 billion's a lot back in the 90s.
They make over $1 billion a year. It's $1 billion industry, that's for sure. The AFL is definitely making a bit of a conscious effort to go up to Queensland, New South Wales and try to kind of get some of that market. And they've been doing that for the last few years. Obviously, you had the teams up there. And that was a big kind of step to that. And now they're trying to get the grassroots up there and trying to start, a bit of momentum up there in the non-traditional AFL ones too.
Is this that we say everything's scripted nowadays? We
NFL
got
scripted.
Sydney playing well, GWS playing really well, out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Brisbane
and Gold Coast is about to make finals.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Gold Coast just blew the lid off the thing, just so it could be all 4 teams in New South Wales and the Queensland. Doing well. I think now it's getting a bit sus.
Yeah.
And then Collingwood and Carlton are doing well. It's like the AFL likes money or something. It's weird.
Hey, let's talk about money. Let's talk about what money buys you. Does money buy you a 19th team in the AFL down in old Tasmania?
See, I'm an idiot. I thought this Tassie thing was done. I thought it was a done deal, signed, delivered. What? Didn't we have a little presser down there and we did a thing?
It's a whole thing. I think all the Tassie boys came down there and were like, yeah, this is great for Tassie football and we're all excited, blah, blah, blah. And then now it seems like the whole thing's in disarray.
I feel like they've just been bulldozing this, like steamrolling this ahead since day one. And they just get down there, we'd love to have a team. And they're like, what team? There's no team.
And the politicians are like, no sirree.
So it's getting very interesting because they're in the midst of a
new vote to see who's going to be the premier there.
Down there. And the current premier, Jeremy Rockcliffe.
Yep.
Rocky.
I love that we get Rocky. Classic Australian nickname.
He wants to be re-elected. He's calling for an early poll and he's pledged. So what he's saying is we'll put a cap on it. We'll say that like Tassie will pay $375 million.
Yep.
No more.
Yep.
From
taxpayers' dollars.
Taxpayer dollars down there. The opposition leader, Rebecca White, has vowed to renegotiate the deal with the AFL if Labor's elected, insisting the waterfront stadium is not a priority for the state. She also believes that it can be built on a different site and doesn't want Tasmanian taxpayers to front the cost.
Well, obviously, as opposition, you're always going to say, oh, taxpayers, hey, I'm going to save you $1. And I still want all the different benefits, right? I still want the Tassie team, still want everything, but I just don't want you to have to pay for it.
That's really like you want your cake and eat it too.
Yes,
so it's
that's what an opposition wants,
I don't want
right?
it to cost anything. I don't want it to be wherever you say you want to put it.
Yeah. Which actually looks pretty dope. I'm not going to lie. Like the Tasmanian kind of blueprint of where that stadium was going to be actually looked pretty cool.
I think it needs to be a showpiece. If they're doing it, it needs to be one of those dope-ass stadiums where you can see the water.
Yeah.
It's like a bit of an attraction. Get people down there. It's going to draw in so many people for tourism every single year. Yeah.
Do they put a roof on it?
You have to. Don't you?
I'd hope so as a player.
It's almost the opposite of the Brisbane tactic of like it pisses rain here every week.
Time.
We're ready for it. We're the weather team.
Wet weather team.
Which I don't know. It's a winter sport.
Yeah, Tassie with the politicians right now, they're going a bit back and forth to see kind of if this Tassie thing's going to happen. And Andrew Dillon's just sitting there going, figure your shit out.
And I think the biggest, talking point that's been left unsaid.
What's that?
They still can't call themselves the Tassie Devils because they're still in that stoush with Warner Brothers, aren't they?
Yes, probably. The Tassie Tigers, surely, Bono. The Jack Jumpers, I mean, that was just a wild scenario, right? I'm not even sure where Jack Jumpers came from with the NBL, but do they do one of these things where like you have a vote on what the team's going to be and everyone throws an idea out there and then it's like a Tasmanian team is voted on, like the nickname of them, whatever, is voted on the people of Tasmania.
Am I an idiot? Is the Jack Jumper a thing? What's a Jack Jumper?
No idea. I don't think it's a real thing. I think it's just like a mascot they made up.
Cool.
But I think this is the way. I think, honestly, more Tasmanian people would vote on what the name of the AFL team would be than the actual premier who's going to be running the place. I think there'd be more votes for that than actually who's going to be in charge.
Yeah, well, in my head, there's an episode of The Simpsons where they have it in Australia and the Prime Minister's like floating out in the middle of the lake in like a floaty and they're like, hey, Mr. Prime Minister. Like, that's what I see in Tassie. Like, it's like 6 people get together, they cast their vote, they're all cousins. And
Brayden, there's some people from Tassie that listen to us. Shout out to them.
I got to check those stats. If we're broadcast down there and you guys get the internet,
Brayden, come on, man.
I thoroughly apologize.
Well, you're going to be the most hated person. Oh, man. No, we're fans of Tasmania. We hope an AFL team comes down there. I think it'd be great for not only the state, but AFL in general. I know they love their AFL down south. And it's a beautiful part of the world. It is. It's one of the most nature-rich and diverse places of Australia, and it's very overlooked from the rest of the country, I feel like. So I'd love for them to get a bit more attention.
Our deep south's probably a bit more, it's nice and safe, and we speak proper English. We're none of that slow shit that we were talking about last week.
I feel like you probably haven't even been to Tasmania.
No, I've been a couple of times. I went to Launceston. I went to Freycinet. Maybe that's where they can put it. You go, all the players go to Freycinet, they play.
One glass back.
And then they go down and have some wine and cheese in front of the fireplace.
That sounds like a good little intro.
It's probably better. Hobart's pretty shit.
Gosh, you're not helping your Tasmanian people are going to hate you.
The docks down there, they kind of stink.
Brayden, come on, mate. Come on. There has some beautiful things down there in Tasmania. We're big fans.
Don't get me to ask you to name them because I know.
Tasmania?
Yeah, the nice things in Tassie.
Mount Wellington's beautiful. You got Cradle Mountain out west.
One Glass
Bay.
One Glass Bay. It's windy though.
It is windy, but that's just part of being in a bay.
I went to Mona.
Mona's cool. Freycinet's really cool. Bay of Fires is really cool. Launceston, shout out to Evansville. I think it's cool. Evansville. It's got the Penny Farthing Festival of the World down there.
And like half the joint is just like forest.
Yeah.
So I reckon.
It's beautiful.
I reckon
you have Queenstown. It's got the gravel oval for AFL that people play on.
Well, that's not a selling point.
There's some history down there, bro.
That's
some
not a
history.
I reckon there's a Sasquatch or two, Sasquatches.
That's where it would live, I
down
think.
in the left-hand side of the Tassie.
That's probably who asked the question last week.
Yeah.
Probably a Tassie person. Anyway, we're going to end on that because it's getting a bit left field now. But massive thank you. Big podcast. Obviously, preseason is finishing up, which means only one thing.
It's not even finishing up. It's
Season
never going to start.
Is around the corner. Not round 1, round 0.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Up in Queensland and New South Wales. We're excited. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. It is an exciting time of year. Footy is around the corner, which means this podcast is going to ramp up. You best believe it.
So next week, we'll be talking about the real footy that matters for points.
Yes.
That's crazy.
You're excited, aren't you?
That's crazy.
It's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great time. But everyone, thank you so much for listening. As always, check out the socials and everything else that goes with it. And a massive thank you for being a part of the community. You are an epic person. We appreciate the love and support. But have an amazing day. Have an amazing week ahead of you. And hopefully, we can get through this preseason unscathed and be ready to go for the year. That's it from us. Goodbye.